Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of the Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation of icons for the weddings and event industry. And this is all to provide inspiration, education for any entrepreneur, but particularly event industry professionals. And I am so jazzed right now. I'm recording this on a Sunday morning. And so last night, I was producing entertainment for a fundraising gala featuring my top band Sound Connection. And I got to say, it's like we all got to take a moment and just sometimes take a moment and breathe and just look at what you have created. You know, just look around you, experience the joy on people's faces and really take it in. I say that because I have my own moments where I am just like lately, I've been feeling so overwhelmed, so spread thin. You know, it's just feeling lately like, you know, just racing. And I'm at this event last night. I was a bit uptight. I took a moment. I was just watching like the results of my work and this incredible band and just felt again the joy and why I got into this to begin with. And I just want to say to y'all, you got to take a moment and really take it in, really give yourself that credit. So anyhow, if you missed last week's episode, it was with Rishi Patel, CEO of HMR Designs, event design and production firm. Rishi's designed events for many discerning clients and celebrities alike. He rose to become CEO with over 100 employees in a very short time, so check it out if you missed it. Today's guest, I am so excited to say, is Jennifer Stein, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine, which can be found on newsstands in all 50 states and 12 countries so far. Jennifer also has this incredible daily blog that you got to check out. She has over 19 years of experience in the business and publishing world and was recognized as one of the top 35 entrepreneurs under 35 by Arizona Republic. She's spoken at many B2B conferences and also consults and custom publishes. Don't forget to listen to the follow-on segment in a couple days, Wednesday, which happens every week with each interview, called The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host and we tease out some of the highlights of the interview in order to help kind of break them down and give you specific tactics and tips to raise your own business to the next level. And the guest co-host will be, for the next level, Harmony Walton, founder of The Bridal Bar and a luxury destination weddings and honeymoon blog site, Jet Fet, and a whole lot more. So I can't wait to talk with Harmony about Jennifer's episode. So enjoy my conversation with Jennifer Stein. So Jennifer, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. I know that we have walked past each other at a couple engages and, you know, didn't quite have a chance to meet in person, but I'm so excited to have you on.
Andy, I am so thrilled to be on. And yes, I know I'm equally as baffled that we've been to so many engages and not actually physically met in person. So I'm glad to be doing this with you.
We're both so famous. I don't know how you didn't recognize me or I didn't recognize you.
You might be the famous one. I, on the other hand.
No, well. Well, but you know, one of the reasons I was so excited, Jennifer, to have you on, I mean, I know who you are. I know of your publication, but also I personally love to travel. Like I've had so many transformative experiences. Matter of fact, I was, people know this, I was in Maui for 5 weeks a couple of years ago. And from getting away from everything and just reconnecting with the planet, myself, I got the inspiration to start the podcast. So I imagine that your job includes a lot of pretty glamorous travel. Is that part of it?
Yes. You know, usually they try and find me a broom closet for me to shove. Kidding. No, yeah, that is definitely the big perk of having a destination wedding magazine is you do get to travel the world. Our editor right now is in Thailand and she's in the Golden Triangle experiencing, you know, all that Thailand has to offer. And I leave on Friday to go to Sorrento in Italy. So that
I'm envious.
Yeah.
Sorrento. Oh, that's romantic.
But it's not all fun and games. I mean, I'm telling you the highlights. There's some lowlights though, too, where we're, you know, it's 2:00 in the morning and we're on a deadline and everybody's sweating and, you know, that happens too. So it's not all fun and games.
Well, and I definitely want to come back to all of this, but I'm curious if while you were growing up, if you had any idea, if there was anything going on as you were growing up that would indicate or point to what you're doing now in the publishing world or in the wedding world.
You know, it's so funny, Andy, that you asked me that. So yes, when I was a little girl growing up, I was one of those kids that, you know, you'd ask a little girl, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they'd say, oh, I want to be a ballerina or a school teacher, or, you know, I wanted to own an empire and live in a brownstone in New York City, never get married or have kids. Like my companion would be a little Jack Russell Terrier. I watched Working Girl when I was young, and I was like, I'm Sigourney Weaver. Like, that is me. I'm going to be like this, like, you know, not her personality, hopefully, but definitely like her level of success. And I always saw myself as kind of an entrepreneur and in business. And so, yes, there was definitely some foreshadowing there when I was little.
Well, were either of your parents entrepreneurs? Like, I'm wondering where some of this might have come from other than the TV show.
Yes. So my mom is kind of a serial entrepreneur. She has and she's actually my business partner. So she started the magazine with me 15 years ago, which is crazy to think that it's been around that long. But she has had everything from an HR consulting business to a daycare center to Destination I Do. She has her master's in counseling. So she's had a counseling practice in Evergreen, Colorado, where she lives. And I mean, so yes, I think that there's some genetic crossover when it comes to the entrepreneurial spirit, if you will.
Well, and you know, it's interesting because on the show, you know, with everybody, but as particularly women, because I have a daughter, so I'm also thinking about what really moves her as she's growing up to understand that, because this was really important to me, that she can do anything she wants, not just as a human being, but also with the challenges with women. And I, being a woman, I love what's going on right now with the Me Too movement and all of that. And so I'm imagining, and we're talking about whatever amount of years ago, that all you know is that your mother, you know, a woman, is self-empowered. Like you say, being the serial entrepreneur, that she can do that. So I love that you grow up where, well, of course, why wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And I do have a lot of very strong female role models in my life. I had two amazing grandmothers. Both of them have since passed, but they both had a huge influence in my life. And I never felt like I couldn't do something if I wanted to do it. Never was I told, like, you're not going to amount to anything, or, you know what I mean? So like, if we want to get like, you know, philosophical here, I never really had any of those boundaries in place. And I feel extremely fortunate to have been raised by a really loving, encouraging family that really has kind of, you know, and my husband, I have an amazing cheerleader of a husband. He is like my number one fan, and Destination I Do is number one fan, partly because he gets to go on some of these trips, mind you, but he's been really supportive through the years too.
Yeah, but that's so important too. You know, maybe some people would say, well, of course, but not necessarily. Mm-hmm. You know, I think any of us being an entrepreneur and in a creative business like this, I don't know. I think there's a lot more. Well, I remember Robert Fountain had mentioned, you know, I interviewed him in San Francisco. He was talking about, he believes that the creatives in the event business just simply come with the default of more anxiety and fear than a typical person, you know? And so, but when you were, let's say in high school, college, I mean, did you major in communications, journalism? I mean, when did you start to kind of, I guess, take action on your passion?
You know, to be honest with you, I had 5 majors in college. So at first I was like, oh, I'm going to go into the medical field because that seems like a safe place to be. And, you know, I was literally all over the map. I even registered at one point to go into the interior design program at ASU. And I took one class of finite math, which you'd be surprised how many physics and math classes are part of that major. And I realized immediately, like, this is way over my head. I'm a writer. I'm a creative, yes, but I'm definitely not a math physics person. I'm more geared towards communication, small business, entrepreneurship, you know, that kind of thing. And so I ended up getting a degree in communication. So I took a ton of journalism classes at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at ASU, which is a really good school for that. And then I had a minor in business. And I didn't realize at the time that my choices in what I was studying would actually kind of go towards what I'm doing for my livelihood. So that kind of, I think, worked out in my favor. I didn't necessarily, I still had that voice in the back of my mind where I was going to be Sigourney Weaver living in New York City and be working girl. But I also, you know, I just was trying to find a place, because at the time it was like, you know, people were like, you just have to find a job. And that's really kind of what my driving force was at that moment. So, and it's moved me into this season of life, which has really worked out nicely.
Well, then what was it? What was maybe the moment, the transformative moment where you realized that this is what you want to do, is to be in publishing and in the wedding world, and even start your own business?
So straight out of college, I went to work for a business-to-business publisher in downtown Phoenix. And it was the very first day of going to that job. I got in the elevator. It was a high rise in downtown Phoenix. I got into the elevator and all of a sudden I got this sick feeling in my stomach. And I'm like, I am about to embark on working for somebody else for the unforeseeable future. And it literally scared me to death. I wasn't excited. I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to start my job. I can't wait to, start bringing in an income that's not, tips that, I worked as a beverage cart driver on the golf course. That was a really lucrative position actually. But, I'm thinking, I don't know that I want to work for someone else for the rest of my life.
But what did that mean to you? When you say that and when you were scared, what did that mean to you?
It meant action, that I needed to figure out what that was going to look like for me and how I was going to make it happen. And some of it was, I don't know, call it fate, destiny, whatever, just being at the right place at the right time. But the next 4.5 years, I basically learned I fell madly in love with publishing. So, I go from the elevator where I'm having like this panic attack that I'm about to work for the man, if you will, for the next, however many years, to getting into the job and into the company and absolutely falling head over heels in love with publishing. I just fell in love with someone having an idea and having intangible items, putting it together and having a physical product that could either help or inspire or educate people. And that just absolutely just resonated with me at my core. I loved the creative process. I loved the collaboration between departments and the different, areas that you could go. I mean, there was just no end to what really could be done. And I just loved that part of it. So I didn't know that I was going to love it that first day when I was riding up on the elevator. I was more just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But then that's what ended up happening.
So Jennifer, what were your responsibilities at that time?
So I started off as a circulation manager, which today's terms, we call them audience development managers. And so I basically oversaw the readership of several publications. We had 28 total publications. I was responsible for, I think, 12 of them. And I started there. I then was promoted to circulation director. So I oversaw all of our subscription data entry, all of the other circulation managers. And I absolutely hated the job. I hated it so much. And I realized at that point that I loved publishing. I didn't want to work for the man anymore. And enter my mom. She and I had actually talked about going into the wedding industry. And the reason we had is I was an assistant wedding planner on the golf course that I worked at through college. And I really loved being part of that with, the couples and just getting excited for their wedding day. But you've seen the movie Groundhog Day, I'm assuming. With
Sure.
Bill Murray.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So when I would see these couples walk down the aisle, it was like Groundhog's Day. It was the same exact event over and over and over again. And I'm going, there's got to be more to weddings, right? So that kind of planted a seed. There was a lot of seed planting going on in my life. And so that planted a seed for me. And I thought, I'd love to be a wedding planner where I get to go out and create events for people that don't look like the Groundhog's Day experience, right? And we'd been on a trip to Maui, actually. I know you have a very fond feeling for the island in Hawaii.
I do.
And I saw a couple getting married and they were just doing like a super basic elopement. And again, it was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more that could be done for this couple. And I thought, I want to do a destination wedding someday. And so fast forward to being at the publishing company, I was circulation director, absolutely miserable, managing all these people. It just was not my forte at all. And my mom and I had been talking about starting a business and maybe going into wedding planning. And she loves it when I say this. She had a menopausal insomnia and got up in the middle of the night and it hit her. And she said, what if we combined Jen's love of destination weddings and, wedding planning and that part with publishing. What does that look like? So the very next day, she and I happened to have plans to have lunch. And at our lunch, she said, what do you think about starting a magazine about destination weddings?
Wow.
And I looked at her and I was like, it was like a bulb went off. Like fireworks. It was one of those moments in your life where you're just like, everything kind of comes together, right? The planning weddings when I was in college on the golf course, the fact that I was already in publishing, the fact that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It literally at that very moment came together, and it was like my future was like started right then, right?
Well, I've got a quick question. At that time, because I'm not aware of exactly when in history that occurred, were there other destination publications out at that time?
So this is the beauty of working for a publishing company. And I didn't know the answer to that. So I went right back to my desk after our lunch, and there still is a resource called SRDS. And I logged on and I looked, and at the time there was not a single publication devoted to destination weddings. Not one. Which, to be honest with you, Andy, that kind of blew my mind a little bit. Because I'm like, I know I'm not the only person on earth who wants to do like not just a destination wedding where you're eloping on the sand or in Vegas or whatever, but like a real wedding where you've got all the pomp and circumstance. You've got floral design. You've got, a professional photographer. You have all those, the trimmings of a hometown wedding, but you're somewhere else. And so, for me, it was like, how is no one else covering this? And so this was June of 2004. By September of 2004, I had quit my job. We had already purchased our URL or our domain. We started working on a logo. We had a sample publication. Our website launched. And by the following, so May of 2005, we had our very first issue on the newsstands at Barnes & Noble Nation.
My God. Well, if I could back up just for a second, because, one thing that I know people have to deal with, and anyone who's working for someone or let's say that they're just not happy, even they have their own business and maybe they want to change paths, taking a leap like that. I mean, that is a leap. You say you left your job. You took that leap. Was it all just fun and excitement, or did was it also scary as hell? Did you have moments of questioning what you were doing, or did you just jump in the deep end?
You know what, Andy? It was kind of all of the above. So I was a good saver. So I purchased a home, when I was 22. My grandmother sat me down when I was 18 and said, you can never rely on a man. He might die or leave you. So,
geez, I talk like this to my daughter. Seriously. It's like, you need to, do this yourself. But yeah.
And so she had convinced me. She said, I want you, before you get married, before you do anything, I want you to purchase your own home. And I did. And so I had a mortgage payment. I had a car payment. It was scary. It was one of those things where I was like, okay, I had a savings account. I had a really high limit credit card. And so, I just kind of looked at myself in the mirror and said, okay, it's now or never. I don't have kids. I'm not married. If I'm going to do this, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, I totally drain my bank account, but I know I can land on, I'll do it to a point where it's like, okay, I can go get a job, at Starbucks or what, I can go back to the golf course and drive the beverage cart if I need to. But it was one of those where I'm like, it's now or never. And what's the worst thing that can happen? So I fall on my face. Oh, well, like failed, moving on, that you learned a lesson. It didn't work out. Oh, well. And that was kind of my attitude. And to be honest with you, I was like, we're going to be millionaires in 6 months. And I had pie in the sky ideas. I was so green at that point. I really was the naivety when it came to the financial part of things was profound. So
can you give me an example? In what way?
So first of all, I was really, even though I worked for a publishing company, I was a little bit floored by the expense of running a business, a print business. And I was also under the impression that, business is really, as long as you cover your expenses and you have, accounts receivables, you're good. And then some things happened, like clients wouldn't pay, or, we'd get hit with a really big surprise bill. Like one of the very first issue that we sent to the printer, our designer made a mistake and created basically a blue line change for every page of the entire magazine, which would have cost us thousands of dollars. But our printer was nice enough that they were like, look, you guys are brand new at this. There were certain things that I hadn't learned at my publishing job that I learned the hard way. I learned through making mistake after mistake. And that's how, honestly, I think that's too, like as entrepreneurs, that's how we grow, is by making mistakes.
Well, It is. That's right. How else are we going to do it? My biggest lessons, my God, they can be so painful and so frightening. And then you look back and it's like, well, you know what? Without that, I never would be where I am. And to remember that in the moment to me is something like I have to remind myself. I've been through so much, we all have, but I have to if I got to somehow remind myself, okay, hold on, and I've mentioned on this show, there's this book by Ryan Holiday called, something about obstacles, but it's all about embracing them and understanding that, like you just said, this is how we're going to grow. This is how I'm going to get to the next step, is having that attitude about them.
Well, and I think from the very beginning, I kind of had an attitude of, I knew what I needed to bring home at the end of the day, but I also knew that in order to grow, you have to reinvest in your company. You can't just be like, okay, well, I read that book, The E-Myth by, what's his name?
Gladwell?
It's basically
Anyway.
No, not Malcolm Gladwell. But anyway, I read that book and it's the myth about entrepreneurship and how, a lot of businesses fail after 3 years or 5 years and that was a good book for me to really understand how you kind of create a hierarchy before you even have those people in place, right? Like you basically create your job descriptions before you even have a job to fill, or a person to fill them. And so there was a lot of reading, there was a lot of research, there was a lot of tripping and falling flat on my face. And same with my mom. She and we absolutely love each other so much. She's my mom. We sometimes we are not the best business partners. And we had to learn that kind of in a lot of ways the hard way. And the good news is we've made it to the other side of it and we're doing great. And she kind of now is more of a silent partner. She's kind of retired with my dad and she kind of did that about 2 years into the business. She still is an active part of the magazine. She's actually right now in Vancouver doing a press trip. And so she likes to do, the research, and she's a vital sounding board for me at all, basically at every turn. But, there was a lot of things that we learned and things that tripped us up big time. And I think part of the reason we're still here 15 years later is luck. It's perseverance. It's like being on the floor in the fetal position and then making the choice to stand up and hustle a little harder and then making it to the other side. You know what I mean?
Do you really feel at moments like that? I know you're using a metaphor, but, being in a fetal position, were there times where you felt that scared, like not knowing what to do?
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. When Modern Bride, this is trying to remember when Modern Bride folded.
I remember Antonio Vandermeer. Yeah.
Yep. When they folded, I was struck with one part, absolute dread, because I'm thinking, how did Condé Nast, I think Condé Nast is who owned them at the time, right? Because I feel like they purchased Brides or Modern Bride, one of them. They had two, so they had Brides and Modern Bride. And it was they're kind of the same product. And so they had to kind of let one go. And I think I don't have any insider information on that time, but that's kind of what it appeared from the outside looking in. And I'm thinking, oh my God.
So you're saying it can happen. It can end.
It can happen. And
even with a major
scary
backing like that, you must be thinking.
Well, and we always kind of, in a joking manner, but it's absolutely true, we're the David to their Goliath, right? We are a very small family-owned company. We have a small staff, which with that comes the ability to be super quick and nimble. It also comes with not having the same resources that a huge conglomerate like Condé Nast has. And so there were times, so our main competitor was Destination Weddings and Honeymoons, and they were owned by Bonaire. They were purchased, I think they were World Publications, and then they were purchased by Bonaire. And they had a lot more resources than we did. And that was tough sometimes. There were times where I would open their publication and it was thicker than ours a few times. I literally was filled with frustration. We are never going to get there. So I had those moments of doubt, self-doubt, product doubt, doubt and like, is this worth it? And then all of a sudden, it was like the minute that would happen, like there was one day I was at the airport and I was sitting next to this lady and my business card fell out of my purse and onto the floor and she gasped and she looks at me and she's like, "Are you with Destination I Do? How do you know that magazine?" And I'm like, and this is literally like the pit of my, like, I'm not making enough money personally. Like, when are we ever going to like go over the hurdle? Like I was really I was struggling. I was hitting that, like, I'm tired, spot. And she goes, "How do you know that magazine? Like, how are you involved?" I said, "Oh, I'm the owner." And she just, didn't even hesitate. She just threw her arms around me and gave me the biggest hug. I'm going to cry. She gave me the biggest hug. And I was like, what? Like, what? Total stranger. And she said, "Your magazine saved my wedding." And I looked at her and I was like, "What do you mean?" And she said that her particular wedding venue had gone bankrupt. And it was literally 3 months before their wedding day. And she was on a business trip and she was walking through the airport and she saw our magazine. She was in tears. She was absolutely in like crisis mode. She saw our magazine on the newsstand, picked it up, turned, and it was the one and only Pomea. We had done a story about them. She saw the photos and she said it was like a cloud had lifted. She called them. They had the date available. The photographer was willing to travel and basically and she goes, "It was the wedding that I never knew I could have." And it just made it it all just surrounded me and I'm like, okay, so our competition might be doing a little bit better than us at the moment. Or, I'm feeling frustrated by, the myriad of different, things that we have to deal with as business owners. Like, it never ends, like the business part of it. Right. But then I'm like, this person, it helps somebody. The whole reason that I fell in love with publishing was that, you can take these intangible things, make a tangible product and help someone or educate them or inspire them. And that to me was like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And every once in a while, I haven't been in the fetal position in a while, but when I've gotten close to it, it just seems like there's this little tap on my shoulder, like, hey, this is, you're like somebody got a lead from, an advertisement that they placed and then ended up booking like $1 million event or, those little things. When I hear that and it really makes it all kind of come together for me.
I want to take a moment to say that if you've listened to my first interviews of Lynn Easton, Tara Gerard, and Colin Cowie, then you would have heard them talking about the value of hiring a PR company and even early in the process. Well, there's an award-winning publicity company that actually focuses on the wedding and events industry, and I'm talking about OFD Consulting. OFD Consulting has placed clients in numerous popular online and print publications, including the New York Times, Martha Stewart Weddings, Style Me Pretty, and many others. And their client portfolio ranges from top planners and venues to respected national brands and industry thought leaders. Go to ofdconsulting.com to learn more. Again, that's ofdconsulting.com. I don't know if you meant this literally. There's a quote. I don't know if it's in your website or somewhere bio. I'm not sure. But you were talking about 3 things that make a company work. And you were saying timing, faith, and people. And there's a part of that sticks out right now for me, the part of it where you said your product will inevitably give you what you need to sustain. Is this one aspect of it?
Absolutely. And I think there's times where, as creatives and all of us in the wedding industry, there's times where social media, we're seeing other people going and booking these big gigs, or, you just see what you see on social media. And all of us start to kind of go, is my product good enough? Am I good enough? I think the thing with entrepreneurship is it is a constant, you're constantly checking yourself. You're checking your ego if you have too big of a one, or, you're checking the fact that maybe you need to, you're going through a time where you're just tired and you need a break. And for you, when you went to Maui and then, you had that quiet time to just be in your own space. And then now you birthed this amazing podcast that people are listening to and being inspired by. So I think we are our product oftentimes. And we really do have to have faith that it can sustain us when sometimes we can't sustain ourselves.
That's right. And, it comes down to, this is very simplistic, black and white, but, when you're in that moment, when I've been in that moment, I just got to wake up and do what I can that day, step at a time, and have this like a faith, whether it's in religious faith or just existential faith, whatever that is to just believe and to just keep going. What can you do? Right? One step in front of the other.
Absolutely. I always, one of the things that, I don't know who said this to me when I was younger, like where I heard it, but just show up. Like, just show up when with your kids, like just show up with your husband or your wife or your, partner, just show up, just be there. And I feel like that absolutely, there have been times in 15 years owning this company that I've just had to show up. Like, maybe I'm not my best that day, but I showed up. And, I feel like if you just consistently do that, things just fall into place eventually. Like, if you just work, just hustle, just put your head down and hustle. And, it is for us, it was really, and it's still that way where I will see, like, I'm always aware of what my competition's doing, right? But you can't get consumed in it. And like Destination Weddings and Honeymoons, when they were around, like I ended up becoming really good friends with their old editor-in-chief, Susan Moynihan. And it was funny because at first we're like, you're the competition. I can't like you. I can't be friends with you. This is while she was there. And we met at Engage and we were both speaking on a media panel. And it was funny because both of us, I think, really didn't want to like the other person. And then we're like, you're actually really cool. Let's be friends. And now she's one of my, really, really close friends. And, but it's interesting because there would be times where I'd look at my competition and be like, well, they're doing this better or we're doing that better. And, at the end of the day, I'm like, what does it matter what they're doing or better or what we're doing better? Just keep on pursuing. You know what I mean?
Well, and also I think, this is hard to get to sometimes for myself, but really just a feeling of abundance, just kind of assuming that there's plenty of space for everyone. There's plenty of room to keep going. Yes. Well, I could talk about these aspects of running a small business forever with you, Jennifer. I love this. I also want to get into some of the specifics of destination weddings. And I know that I believe, and I'm not sure where I saw this, but that 49% of couples are now doing weddings 2 or more hours away from home. So destination weddings are really thriving. Does that number sound accurate to you?
That is absolutely accurate. And I think that number actually came from the Knot study from 2017 or 18. And we see that. We call those drive market weddings where someone, let's say they live in LA, but they can drive to Palm Springs to do a wedding, or, Chandler, Arizona to Sedona, or, going from one of, South Carolina to North Carolina. Those kinds of weddings are really popular. And part of it is because it allows people to do a wedding where they're not asking people to spend thousands of dollars to hop a flight to Paris, or, it allows more people to come oftentimes. And it also meant it kind of has this, it has the trappings of a destination wedding in the fact that you've got to plan from afar. You kind of feel like you're on vacation with your guests when you're there because pretty much everybody has to travel. And so, those drive market weddings have been on the rise for a while now.
And what about fly weddings?
Those I feel like they're still pretty holding strong at 25%. And that's kind of what we were seeing. So when we started the magazine, about 10% of all weddings were destination weddings. And now it's 25% are, people that are flying to their destination, and 49% is they're driving. And so, I feel like that the 25% has been holding strong, but I love that 49% number because it just it's fun. People are able to kind of enjoy doing the destination wedding without making that enormous commitment it's not that it's an enormous commitment, but for some people it is to, get a passport. And, there's certain people that just are not comfortable flying, or they're not comfortable leaving the country for whatever reason. And so these drive market weddings kind of allow for people like that to be accommodated.
I'm also wondering, I'm aware that couples more and more and more are paying themselves, or they're at least contributing more than ever before, which I believe really empowers the couples. And so it seems to me that they're also whereas maybe the parents were doing this, the couples are now able to really bring in more of their own vision and dream, without hesitation. They have something to do with it. And, the increase in travel, for our generation and all of that must have a lot to do with it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think there's a couple of reasons for people paying for their own. Number one is people are waiting longer to get married. So oftentimes you're talking about two professionals that, they have really good jobs. They have a household already. They may be living together, or if they're not, they still have two incomes that's allowing them to really finance the entire thing. And, it's interesting when a family gets involved and they start paying the bills, it does affect decisions that are made. It does. I don't care who you talk to. When someone, the minute they're like, here's my pocketbook, they start having opinions on how that money is spent. And that's just the reality of it. And I think a lot of couples, they want the wedding the way they want it. And maybe they know it subconsciously or not, but they're like, listen, I'm going to pay for either all of it or a major portion of it myself.
I'm going to start digging in here. What are some of the biggest tips that you would give? And I'm going to make this two parts, that you would give to people on planning a destination wedding themselves for the consumer, and then also for those in the industry, who are planning design. Let's say that they haven't yet had much experience planning a destination wedding. Can you help us with that?
Okay, so for the couple who's planning a destination wedding themselves, if they're paying for themselves and so on and so forth, the biggest tip I would say is get a wedding planner. And get a wedding planner who truly knows the destination that you're getting married in. There are people, I hear couples so many times, are they really worth the money? Or it's going to cost us so much more to have a planner. The reality of it is, depending on who you work with, oftentimes planners can actually save you money because you're not making mistakes. I always say it's like looking at a Cheesecake Factory menu versus an In-N-Out burger menu. When you first start getting into the planning mode as a first-time couple, you've never done this before, it's like looking at a Cheesecake Factory menu. You're like, where do I even begin? There are so many options for florists or venues or photographers or whatever the case may be. And when you work with a wedding planner, they find out your needs, your budget, your style, all of those things, and they drill it down because of their knowledge, their experience in the marketplace, so on. And they've worked with certain people, so they know who to work with, who not to work with, and they drill it down to the In-N-Out burger menu. And it makes things so much less stressful. Like, number one thing, get a destination wedding planner.
Well, and what about for someone who wants to go more into that segment of the wedding industry? Like a couple questions, in terms of tips for planning and designing for those who are doing this out of town for themselves, and also how to and not to introduce yourself to begin with into the destination wedding segment. That's a big step.
It is a big step. And I think the first thing I would say to someone who's thinking about let's say they're a wedding planner or a photographer and they want to venture into destination weddings. The first thing I would say is, why do you want to do destination weddings? Is it because you saw a bunch of photos on Instagram of people doing fam trips and it looks amazing and you want to be invited? And so all of a sudden you're going to position yourself as a destination wedding planner? If that's the reason, just don't. If it's because
even though all of this is obvious on the surface, when you look at the people, again, from this show, I know so many people who are on these trips constantly, David Beam, Colin Cowie, Brian Raffinelli. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on. And it's because I'm sure that they all know that, they've been on other fam trips and they are bringing business to those locations, to those venues. And so they know that, they're going to bring Marcy Bloom on a fam trip. They know that she's going to very seriously consider that location.
Absolutely. And
has the clientele too, also has the clientele.
100%. And it's interesting because I did a fam trip with David to Italy, and I produced a story. Susan Moynihan produced a story. Harmony Walton produced a story. Every single one of the planners that was there with us had absolute intention. And I'm not sure how many events that they ended up booking, but I know for a fact that David specifically handpicked the people that were on that trip, knowing that it was going to benefit the location, the destination, and the properties that we visited. And it did. I mean, it absolutely did. And so that's the thing I would say is if you just want to get on a fam, like quite honestly, like it would just be so much better for you just to take a family vacation. However, if you really want to do destination weddings because you just feel like traveling the world with your clients and showing them places and showing them other cultures and, just getting to do something creatively that's outside of the space that you're currently in, and you feel like that would really take your own design aesthetic to the next level so you can offer more to the public, absolutely do it. And the way you do it is you learn about the specific destinations that you're wanting to plan in, because every one of them is a little different. Like there's language barriers, there's, cultural things that we have to respect and be aware of. And I think, if like, let's say, for example, someone's like, I really love Mexico and I really would love to plan weddings, make a trip down there. Get to know the local vendors. Really get to know the properties, the pros, the cons, and don't just go on the website and be like, oh, I can plan destination weddings now because I saw their website. Let me tell you, I've seen lots of websites and then gone on a fam or a press trip. And then I'm like, yeah, no, this is definitely not what I was thinking, or it's better for this particular couple and not that particular couple. And the only way I would know that is because I physically went there.
So do you have any advice, after a step like that, starting to educate yourself, how to actually put yourself out there to the public? How do you bring yourself into that part of the industry?
So I would just say, to document your trips. So let's say you're, doing a fam trip or you're doing a trip to Mexico. Absolutely, put that on your Insta stories, put it on your Instagram feed, put it in some of your marketing that's out there. If you've got a banner ad on Style Me Pretty, or if you've got an ad in Destination I Do, like make sure that your design aesthetic and that destination carries over through your branding.
And also I want to ask, and I put out word to my listeners, to submit, and I've got a couple that I want to bring up here. This first one is about submissions, like to the magazine, to the publication, because I'm sure you're just inundated by pitches that aren't always necessarily a fit for the brand or for the audience. So Thorn and Thistle asks, they say, we love to submit weddings for publication. What are your must-have photographed or standout details when selecting for blog or print publication?
So just to let you know, for blog, we take 104 submissions or 104 weddings a year. For the magazine, we only take 14. So when it comes to the magazine, we are really, really, really picky. So we will look at, first and foremost, we need to really get a sense of place, right? Like we have to really feel that destination. If it's an absolute gorgeous ballroom, it's not a fit for us because that ballroom could be in Milwaukee, or it could be in like Milan, you know what I mean? So we really need to get a sense of the destination. So those are absolute must-have photos for us. The other is just the personality of the couple. They don't have to be runway models. They don't have to be, a certain ethnicity. We just love personality. And for people to have, really interesting wedding gown or cake, or, like we did an absolutely amazing, we featured a wedding that Dennis Kwan and Amy Monahan of Tropical Occasions, they collaborated, and it was a same-sex Indian couple, and they had this wedding in Costa Rica that just blew our minds. It had so many design details. It was so over the top. It had everything you could ever want in a destination. So it really showed off Costa Rica lovely in the most lovely light. And then, they had multiple outfit changes. They had multiple events that went along with, their overall celebration. And so I would say, making sure that there's just personality in the details and things that are different. Like when mason jars were a thing, we were so happy when people stopped using mason jars, and like this blush and gold, we're like, we've seen it so many times. So color, destination, culture, all of those things really kind of get us excited when we're looking at different submissions.
Geez, I love what you said about the personality of the couple, manifesting in this way. That is a really valuable to also look at it through that angle. I hadn't thought about that. Also, in terms of finding resources. So another listener of the Wedding Biz, Laurel and Rose, said, we are working on a destination wedding in Bora Bora, and our couple is not happy with the local florist and decor options and wants me to find a vendor to bring in that can do full-scale production, including extended extensive floral design, building a ceremony platform, etc. And I'm really having trouble finding vendors either in that area or that can travel and be able to use local materials. Do you have resources to help source vendors around the world, especially in more remote areas?
When it comes to something that specific, no. Here's the thing. If there's not a lot of local options, that does really create a bit of a juggernaut, if you will, for not only the planner, but also the couple. I would suggest trying to venture out to, because when you're talking about Bora Bora, there's not a lot around there. So I would look at countries like Fiji. I would look at New Zealand, Australia. New Zealand and Australia have a huge wedding market. And I know that there's a lot of people that really like Nadia Duran. She might actually be a good source to just say, hey, I need a florist. Not all wedding planners will share their Rolodex, if you will, to harken back to the days of Rolodexes. But, you might want to just talk to somebody who is in either Australia or New Zealand and find out if they have a really good resource for floral. Because we don't really drill down to that point for like wedding planners. Like we would be able to say, hey, this is a great place to get married, but we don't know the ins and outs of like the floral options in, say, Bora Bora.
Well, but I love the main point you're making, which is wherever in the world you're looking, if you can't find what you need right there, again, it might be obvious, but we don't all think of it. Start to expand out. What is a major country as close as possible and start looking there, So, also how, kind of in another direction here, how can us professionals in the business determine if a certain advertising opportunity is really worth our investment? That's tough sometimes.
It is tough. And, this is where having a circulation background is actually really advantageous to me because it's basically audience development. And first thing to do is understand your own client, right? And then after that, understand, like if you're looking at a certain media outlet, understand their client and make sure that there's a connection between the two. And that may seem super obvious, but it is amazing to me when I talk to people based on how they're placing their ads. They're saying, well, so-and-so told me that this particular outlet was good for them. And so I just went and invested in it. You know what I mean? And I get that. Like you obviously, crowdsourcing is a really helpful tool. But first and foremost, you got to understand who is your client and then go and look. And also who's your competitor? If your competitor who is grabbing business left and right, and you see their ad in a specific place and they share that same audience and that audience is the right one for you, there's no harm in placing an ad where your competition is ever. It's never a bad thing. I wouldn't necessarily position myself like in the same spread, but I would make sure, to invest where someone else may be, getting a lot of leads. I would also, to the point of the crowdsourcing, ask for references, but you need to take it with a grain of salt. Because here's the point about marketing and advertising. The point of the media outlet is to drive traffic to your site or to your business, right? It is not to book the business for you. And so what I've had happen is we've had success stories and we've had absolute failure stories. And in the failure situations, when I really dig and say, what happened? I would have thought this would have been an absolute match based on who they said their audience was and who our audience is. And when I really dig deep and learn and find some things out, I learn a lot. When I ask questions, you learn a lot when you ask them questions. And one of the things that I was finding out was that their website, when someone would go to fill out like their form to contact them, they had one of those, like, I'm not a robot things, and it was glitching out their form. So the forms, we tested it. We're like, okay, well, let's just test this because we're seeing this much traffic come from our site to go to theirs. So we know they should be seeing leads. So then we fill it out and the next thing we know, it like glitches out and they're not getting any of the leads that people are, you know what I mean? So it can be something as simple as that. And if someone just called up that advertiser who had an epic failure with us and said, how did you get any leads? They're going to say no, but that wasn't on our end. That was absolutely on their end. So just take it with a grain of salt when you hear, yes, this worked, but I would absolutely ask for references. Can you, ask the advertising rep that you're talking to.
That's a brilliant idea. Yeah.
Yeah. To just, give a couple success stories and for companies that are also like yours, because, they may do great on the venue side, but maybe the photographers aren't booking anything. or the planners aren't booking anything. So just make sure that when you're asking for references, that they're businesses that are like yours. The other thing I would say is to see examples. Like, so many people say, oh, well, we'll do a blog post for you. We will do an Instagram takeover, or we'll include you on our story feed or on our Insta stories. And you hear that, but what does that actually look like, right? Like, is it branded for you? Is it more like on the editorial side? So ask for specific examples that you can look at and really understand how they're going to position you. And then you can never ask how many bookings, but you can ask how many leads should you expect over, 6 months, 3 months, a year. Ask that question. They should have that answer. You can also ask for the amount of traffic that you should expect to see. I mean, when we're sending out RFPs for major advertising partners like, Cayman Islands or Palladium Resorts or whatever, they're asking us, how many impressions should our banner ads see each month? And we tell them that. Like, we have the reporting, we have analytics on our site, so we're able to show that. And I'm speaking from digital. When it comes to print, it's a lot harder to measure, but it still has so much value. I know that people are like, print's dead, print's dying, whatever. I own a print magazine, so clearly I don't believe that. The reason I don't believe print is dead is because when people are submitting their weddings to us, they say, when we give them the option, would you rather be in print or blog? They never say blog. They say print every single time. And that's not just the couples. It's also the vendors that are working with us that have submitted it. And the other thing I want to just point out, and then I'll move on to the next point. When you have primarily online organizations like Airbnb or retail organizations like Magnolia Home or Restoration Hardware, these guys didn't get in the print business, but every single one of them has launched or had a successful print product. And so I just want you to think through that. There is so much value still in print. And I get a little pickly when people are like, print's dead, and they just write it off. I think there are certain ways that print is dead, like the way we get our news. People are not normally, like in our generation, they're not opening a newspaper every day. Some people still are, but I would say the vast majority are not. So the other thing I would say about finding out if an advertising opportunity is worth your investment is determine if the return on your investment fits the price. So if you need to book, let's say, one event or 10 events, depending on whatever your buy is. So let's say it's like a $2,000 package, and you need to book one event to make that worth your investment, then it's worth your investment. If you have to book 50 events, probably, you know what I mean? So like, make sure the punishment fits the crime in a way, like kind of a bad way of saying that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, this is great. Very valuable. And I just have a few more questions. Talking about digital, I have a different question about it in print. I'm wondering how the immediacy of today's digital world and the ability to just instantly share content, like even Wedding Pigs, affects you and the industry, because the public used to have to wait, right? They'd have to wait for it to be published. Well, now it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on Pinterest, it's everywhere. How has that affected you? Okay,
so that is a great question, Andy. It has affected us in a way that everybody wants it yesterday. So for us, we have a lag time when it comes to even our blog, because we have a schedule that we put out, and someone will say, they'll pitch us something, and then we'll say, hey, we don't have a position on our blog for 3 months. Or we're going to print this, but we're not going to be able to print it for 6 months. They have a coronary. Like, it's just, they get so upset. What do you mean I have to wait that long? Like, people are going to, and sometimes it's the anticipation is half the, the excitement. But what it's created is it's created an animal, in that we have a lot of people that do get very frustrated with how long it takes to be in print. But at the same time, it's also created a really fun, exciting atmosphere on the other side. Because when we, like, for example, if we see it's National Whatever Day, we can put something together and throw it up on our Insta stories in 2 seconds. Where before, when Instagram didn't exist or Facebook didn't exist or any, oh, well, that opportunity was missed. And so it's created a ton of opportunity to be relevant, our news and our information comes at us at lightning speed. And so we have the ability, because of these things, to connect with people quickly and immediately and solve problems quickly and immediately. And so I feel like it's a blessing and a curse. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, before we wrap up too, I understand that you also consult and custom publish. Is that right? Can you tell me more about that?
We do. To be honest with you, I have a lot of opinions when it comes to circulation and advertising and all of that because, working in a publishing company that for now, gosh, how many years has it been? 19 years total. I feel like there's a lot of misleading information out there. And even if someone isn't going to work with us, I absolutely would work with someone to try and help them find the right marketing strategy for them. There are so many other people that I know that are marketing experts per se. And I wouldn't say that I am like, God's be all end all or anything like that. But we do absolutely help our clients with copywriting, with if they've got a custom published piece that they want. We've actually had multiple custom published pieces that we've done through the years, whether it's for just a branding positioning, if it's an actual product that goes on newsstands, we've done that. And it's really fun for us because the print part is easy for us. Like we love it. We absolutely love working with the clients, coming up with their creative, making sure that their copy is, on their brand. And, so basically we do custom publishing, we do consulting. And then we also know a lot of consultants that are really great at, PR or social or, different, or they put all of those things together. And so we oftentimes will refer business out. One of my good friends, Harmony Walton, she is literally like a powerhouse. She is one of the most business savvy marketing PR gurus that I absolutely lean on all the time when I've got questions. And so I oftentimes will kind of like push people in her direction too. But yeah.
Yeah, it's, Harmony actually was on the show. I wish I could right off the top of my head give the date, but it was a tremendous conversation with her. And then recently, who was it about? I think it was, she was on The Next Level with me, my guest co-host for The Next Level, talking about my part 2 interview with Colin Cowie. So yeah, Harmony she's amazing. Now, so Jennifer, how can we find out more about you and Destination I Do with website and social media? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
So I will give you my cell phone number. No, I'm just kidding. Make sure you call
Be careful.
Me. No. So destinationido.com is our website. And people can always email me directly at jennifer@destinationido.com. And then when it comes to, it's amazing to me, like what my inbox looks like on any given day. It can be anything from like a completely ridiculous PR pitch about like something that is totally irrelevant to our product. Or it could be, a wedding planner who is like, hey, I just got a client who wants to book in this particular place. I gave them 3 hotel options. They want one more, have you been, what do you think? Those kinds of things. So my inbox is always open, like always. I am pretty good about replying to emails as quickly as possible.
Very generous of you. Okay.
I do my best. I can't always promise that I'll be like, that.
All right, listen, everybody listening, inundate Jennifer with emails just completely. Just whatever, send pictures of your dog. Just go for it.
Yeah, just make sure you do it after April 10th because otherwise I'll be in Italy and I don't want an email avalanche.
God.
I don't think this is going to air then, but we'll see.
And what about social media? What are your handles?
So social media, it's just Destination I Do. And so we're on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're still on Twitter. It is a thing. Gotta love the president of the United States is keeping that one relevant.
Let's please not go there. Please.
I promise. That's all I'll say about him.
I have been trying to stay completely apolitical this entire time on the show.
Okay, that's for another podcast.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Well, God, Jennifer, this has been such a fun time with you. A pleasure and fun. I've really enjoyed having you on here on the show. I'm going to find some ways to get you back on again. I think I'm going to have you on The Next Level. You got to be a guest co-host. Will you do that with me?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I would love that.
Okay, done deal.
What you wish for though, Andy.
Oh, no. It's a done deal. I want you on that show for sure. So, well, thanks again, Jennifer. It's been wonderful. Really wonderful.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's such a pleasure talking to you. You've been awesome too.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Jennifer Stein. Be sure to check out her website at destinationido.com. She also has a wonderful blog, destinationido.com/blog. And her Facebook can be found at Destination I Do Mag, M-A-G. And Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram is Destination I Do. Again, Destination I Do. And if you didn't follow all this, just go to my website, theweddingbiz.com. It's all in the show notes. And please, please help us out by sharing this episode. I know it was an incredible one, and it really helps new people to find us if you share it with your friends and colleagues, and give a great review too, where you get your podcast from. Don't forget to check in a couple days for the Next Level episode that goes with this. My guest co-host is going to be Harmony Walton. I know many of you know her, founder of The Bridal Bar. I can't wait to talk with Harmony about Jennifer's episode. And then next week, I'm going to be releasing my interview with Lisa Gardner, a wonderful marketing and PR consultant. It was a really great conversation. So again, thanks everyone for listening. And this is The Wedding Biz.